Guyana is home to 9 indigenous groups, and human rights violations against them, particularly with respect to land and resource use, are widespread and pervasive. Indigenous peoples attempt to seek redress through the courts have been met with unwarranted delays by the decade. Long-standing animosity between Afro and Indo-Guyanese remains a serious concern. A 2002 racial hostility bill increased, and efforts are undermined by corruption that reaches to high levels of the government. The informal economy is driven primarily by drug corruption going on, and going into that, we're going to talk about the news a little bit. The Stabroek News and the Kaitira News so that you'll know what it's like a little bit, and it's just one of their articles from a while ago. So, their station is located in Georgetown as well. So, although freedom of the press is generally respected, an uneasy tension between the state and the media persists. Several independent newspapers operate freely, including the Daily Stabroek News. However, opposition party leaders complain that they lack access to state media. So, the state owns and operates the country's sole radio station, which broadcasts on 3 frequencies. In 2009, the Guyana Press Association denounced a government initiative to license media professionals as an attempt to impose control over the profession. Government officials occasionally use libel lawsuits to suppress criticism. The government also closed an internationally funded media monitoring unit established in 2006 to monitor media ahead of national elections. Prior to the 2011 elections, President Bharat Jagdeo had disparaged journalists from Guyana's best-known media outlets as vultures and carrion crows. In October, Guyana Elections Commission Chairman Steve Surujubli expressed concern about such attacks, calling them self-destructive, nation-wrecking, counterproductive, and quite frankly, inane. There are no government restrictions on the internet. Guyanese generally enjoy freedom of religion, and the government does not restrict academic freedom either. So, the judicial system is independent, but due process is undermined by shortages of staff and funds. In 2005, Guyana cut all ties to the Privy Council in London, the court of last resort for other former British colonies in the region, and adopted the Trinidad-based Caribbean Court of Justice as its highest appellate court. Prisons are overcrowded and conditions are poor. So it's clear that there's a lot of problems with corruption in Guyana at the moment, and we're just gonna go around this area a little bit and show you the area. Lacey Town, as you can see here, it's close to Stabroek News. It's a highly populated area. So, the Guyana Defense Force and National Guyana Police Force are under civilian control. Racial polarization has seriously eroded law enforcement, and with many Indo-Guyanese complaining that their that they are victimized by Afro-Guyanese criminals and ignored by the predominantly Afro-Guyanese police. Meanwhile, many Afro-Guyanese claim that the police are manipulated by the government for its own purposes. Official inquiries have repeatedly called for improved investigative techniques, more funding, community-oriented policy, better disciplinary procedures, greater accountability, and a better ethnic balance in the form of police force. But the government has taken few concrete steps to implement the proposed reforms. So there's a lot of things saying that they're going to happen, but they're never actually happening, and it's a huge problem. So I think that's one of the main things that needs to be addressed. So going along with their corruption, and we're going to go to a police station here just so you can kind of look at it. It's the Brickdam Police Station. And they have you can see a few that they have. We'll go to them. But violence against women, including domestic abuse, is widespread. Rape often goes unreported and is rarely prosecuted. The Guyana Human Rights Association has charged that the legal system's treatment of victims of sexual violence is intentionally humiliating. And we're going to go to the Human Rights Association now. In this picture, the man on the right is the president of the association. So, the 2010 Sexual Offenses Act make rape gender neutral and expands its definition to include spousal rape and coercion and child abuse. The new law also provides for offenses committed against the mentally disabled. Sodomy is punishable with the maximum sentence of life in prison, and cross-dressing is criminalized for both men and women. In February 2010, the Society Against Sexual Orientation Discrimination filed a motion with the Supreme Court challenging the constitutionality of the law banning cross-dressing. A hearing on the issue is expected really soon, actually. It's mid-2012, so it'll be coming up. And so we're just going to zoom in a little bit. You can't see it very well, but that would be the building. So their freedom from the press scores for 2011, their score was 30, legal environment was 7, political environment was 13, and economic environment is 10. The Constitution provides for freedom of speech and of the press, and media are generally allowed to operate without interference. However, neither long-promised legislation to facilitate the distribution of private radio licenses nor Freedom of Information Bill have been introduced. Opposition parties charge the repeated deferral of these pieces of legislation reflects the government's unwillingness to open the media to wider ownership or allow greater diversity of viewpoints. The ruling People's Progressive Party has responded that it is determined to bring in the legislation and that delays were due to a long drafting process. The so-called broadcasting bill is seen as key to the issuance of additional television and radio licenses, thereby breaking the existing state monopoly on radio. Journalists complain about difficulties in accessing official information. The proposed Freedom of Information Act is expected to make it a crime for the government to withhold information about state contracts and similar matters, but it had not been formally introduced by year's end.